A lot of the time, our experience was we would see in front of us teams are getting ready to do 5S. And you come back 3 weeks later, you're still stuck where to start from, how to go about it. It doesn't work. They want to do Kaizen event, which really we don't really care about the words. Kaizen we don't even use. We just talk about let's do a quick baby step improvement. We don't have to become Japanese, language expert to try to tell the shop floor guy who's been there for 20 years and looks at you and says, what did you say, Kaizen? What is the Kaizen? Is it some kind of a sauce? You have to be in their world. If you have something that really truly works in every environment, it better make sense to them.
What's up, everybody? This is Paul Critchley, president of New England Lean Consulting. Welcome to another episode of the New England Lean Podcast. I hope everybody had a great week last week. I hope you enjoyed our episode with Art Byrne. It was an honor to have him on the show. Art is a huge name within the Lean community. He's done so much, it was really an honor to have him on the show. So again, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I hope you got something from it. Here in New England, I'll say spring has sprung. We had a great weather week last week. We actually had a day that almost hit 70, which for us is pretty rare in March. I don't think we're going to see that again for another week or so, but it was a nice little taste of things to come. Likewise, I hope you've at least semi-recovered from having to spring the clocks ahead. I know for me, it always takes a day or two to kind of get used to the new schedule, but I am always thankful come later spring and summer to have that, air quotes, extra hour of daylight towards the end of the day. It is nice to be outside at 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it's still daylight, so we can enjoy some time. This week, I've continued along with the experiment that I ran with Dagmar and Tom from UNH a few weeks ago. So I have two guests with us this week. The first is Sean Fields. Now, Sean's a licensed PE in the state of Texas. He's a Lean Six Sigma black belt, and he has a master's in industrial engineering. Now, Sean also has over 30 years of experience in a wide variety of industries, including oil field equipment manufacturing, which, right, no surprise, he lives in Texas, also food processing, and he does a lot of work with job shops. And that's why I titled this episode what I did, because we do talk a fair bit about that in this episode. And it's a big reason why he and Dr. Michael Sanders, who's our other guest, wrote the book Quantum Lean. Now, before I get to that, I want to introduce Dr. Michael Sanders. He's also a Lean Six Sigma black belt. He has an MBA, and he has a Ph.D. in industrial engineering. He's the co-founder of the BeehiveFund, which is a not-for-profit organization dedicated to assisting industry with things like lean, continuous improvement, basically improving their operations. So together, these two gentlemen got together and wrote a book called Quantum Lean. Now, it's relatively new. It just came out at the end of September of 2020, so it's not very old. I had a chance to read it, and I really, really liked it. They come at it from a slightly different perspective than other lean books that I've read, and I've read a lot of them, because they come at it from the product perspective, and I don't want to ruin it. So I do encourage you to pick the book up and give it a read. Like I said, I read it and I really liked it because it did make me think a little bit differently than I have, previously reading other lean books, dealing with some of the, clients that we have. So it gave me pause. And like I said, it made me think differently. And that's what I'm looking for when I'm reading, whatever book it is, whether it's lean specific or just business in general. It really made some important points that I think as a lean community, maybe we don't spend enough time talking about. And it all comes back to time. Now, if you're a client of ours and you're listening and you've had a workshop with us, you'll recognize that theme because we talk about that a lot too. It all comes back to time. What do we spend our time doing? Now, in general lean terms, it's, something value added or non-value added. Now, Sean and Michael don't use that terminology. They call them a little bit different terminology because they're taking a little bit different approach. So I don't want to spoil it because I do encourage you to pick the book up and give it a read. We also talk in this episode about burden and benefit, because again, both of these gentlemen have done a lot of work with job shops. And again, as a lean community, I know we do talk about those things, but I also feel like, maybe we don't promote that enough, because job shops are faced with a little bit different scenarios than, say, a higher production shop. And I think that we have to, take those things into consideration. Lean is not one size fits all, certainly not. And again, that was kind of one of the motifs of the book that they've written called Quantum Lean. So I'll leave it at that. Give a listen to the episode. As always, I hope you like it. I hope you get something from it. We'll talk to you soon. All right, welcome to the New England Lean podcast. As I mentioned in the intro, we have, count them, 2 guests once again, Sean Fields and Dr. Michael Sanders. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I'm so excited that you guys are here. You wrote a book called Quantum Lean, which I read. I thought it was great, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But before we do, I always like to start out because, even though the lean community is sort of smallish, not everybody knows everybody. So if you could maybe just hum a few bars each about kind of what your story arc is and how you got to where you are today, just to let everyone, kind of get to know you a little bit. That'd be awesome.
Okay. You want to start, Michael? Or?
Sure. My introduction to lean has been in mid-90s. I sold off my manufacturing and distribution companies and went back to a Ph.D. program. And during that time, I was transitioning from biochemistry background to engineering background. And that's when I really realized I didn't know anything about processes, which really woke me up. And I understood how the approaches to process improvement and organizational improvement works, which I did a big portion of my PhD on organizational improvement. And from the standpoint of quality and quality movements, going back to the history, I got introduced to it. And I saw the movements from, of course, Frederick Taylor all the way to Henry Ford and carried out by Toyota. I got very well introduced. Then after my schooling, I had a great opportunity to go to Michigan. As I was a professor in there, I also got involved with automotive industry, and I got hired by GM to teach some of the courses to their management. And also, I had students who became mid-managers in Toyota and Honda. They dragged me to some projects to be improved, and I got very, very deep with lean. That's when I got my I would say, real training in the field. From the standpoint of industrial and systems background, you really learn the foundation of the lean, which is based on, obviously, industrial engineering concepts. So we have that schooling. We also have the experience later on independently. Sean and I did work together during the 90s, but after that, in early 2000, we were separated independently. We realized that our approach that is written in the book is actually working the best way to implement lean philosophy in the field meaning all types of and all sizes of organizations. When we get back together, we realized, hey, we both had practiced this focus that we are talking about, which we call it product-centric, and it turned out to be great. And we validated that with numerous different projects in the field, in different industries, and then later on, we came up with the book, and which is now out. That's my introduction to lean.
Awesome.
Sean, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
In my case, I've got about 33 years of experience in different industries. And, and basically I was working a lot of that time in an industrial engineering capacity. And I would say that one of the things that really formed me to a large degree is that I was raised and did a lot of my work in a region of the country called West Texas. And pretty much Texas is a very large state, and you and I were discussing this before this interview, but West Texas is a region that's very unique, very much its own. And I'll say this: I've worked in many countries. I've worked in all 50 states, and so I've gotten a good sampling of how people think and how people go about things. And a lot of what really formed my approach to lean and Michael's approach to lean is that both of us did a lot of work in this region called West Texas. And it's a very down to earth, very get it done type of place. If you're working with people out in the field in West Texas, you'd better know what you're talking about. And also, if you start throwing around Japanese terms, you might get your butt kicked. It's that kind of thing. And
Right.
so what happens is you've got to be, like I say, very have a good rapport, be very approachable, and you've got to present a system that makes a lot of immediate sense to people. And that's a lot of what made Quantum Lean come about, because when you are in this area of Texas, a lot of companies don't really make more than 30 of anything. It's very much a job shop situation. And I think a lot of times when people explain lean, they're explaining it from the standpoint of mass production, and they don't go to a lot of trouble to explain how you can make that transition into a truly custom job shop environment. And so a lot of what made Quantum Lean come about is that necessity of getting lean to adapt to that, because to me, lean principles are valid absolutely everywhere, but a lot of times people don't make it clear how that thing applies. Because to me, you can say stuff like flow value to the customer, but in 99% of people's minds, they're going to be going, well, that sounds good, but what does that mean in my particular setting? And so that's the thing we went to a lot of trouble to do, is create a framework that people could learn very readily and apply anywhere. And so that's kind of my background. And so, Michael and I got together and decided to really spread this idea that we think has worked very well, and we think, can really help a lot of people get a little more out of lean than they're getting right now.
Great. Thank you. And so you guys hit on two things that I had written down in my notes when I read the book. So we'll jump right in. And that was the biggest thing when I read your book that jumped out to me, which was, because we get that too. So where I am, just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, from here up towards Springfield, Mass, it's referred to as Aerospace Alley, because we are very close to Pratt & Whitney, which is in Middletown, Connecticut, East Hartford, and a lot of tier 1, tier 2 suppliers up along the I-91 corridor. And we get that exact I had that exact question from what turned into a client for us, because they said exactly what you just said, Sean. They said, listen, we could get an order for 5 widgets tomorrow, and we will never see those things again.
Right.
So how do I take lean? And this was the GM looked at me in the face and said, I don't understand how to take lean, because I've read some books about it.
Right.
And how to apply that here. And he kind of goes like this with his hands to his shop. He's like, Paul, I need your help.
Right.
And you're right. We've been working with them now. We've got, certain cell, we've more than doubled their output. And now he's like, we're best friends. And he's like, I can see it now. And I explained it back then, but it is hard because I don't know if it's as a community, maybe we don't talk enough about it. So I give you guys a lot of credit for hitting upon that, because I think that was really a key topic in your book, and it really does come through. So I'll say thank you for kind of bringing that to light, because as you said, lean does apply everywhere. You don't have to make, I used to work in automotive too. I was the application engineer for the GM 4T65 transaxle. They made 6,500 of those a day, right? So we took a second and a half out of some, cycle time that we had. That was big money. But around here, you make 2 of, this thing, and you take a second. It's like, who cares? Right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So how did you guys, so you talked a little bit about your histories and how they kind of converged. So how did you guys, how did you start talking about what you viewed as where lean kind of fell short, or it wasn't kind of getting communicated, and what made you decide to write a book? Because that's no small undertaking.
Well, appreciate that. I'll volunteer on my end. It's like Michael said, we worked together for a while, and and really lean's not the only thing that we've worked with people on. Like, I figure it's the same for you. We work with people on a wide variety of things, from software development to like quality management systems like ISO 9000, and and we did some lean. But when Michael and I kind of went separate, we were working on lean independently, and then we came back together in the mid 2000s, and that's where Michael and I started working together a lot. And we compared notes, and really we had a much like mind on how a lean ought to go. And that's and also, I was talking with you about if you do a lot of work in Texas, you have a lot of what we call windshield time. When you're driving to a job site, there's a lot of time for me and Michael to talk during that trip. And so we just bounced around a lot of ideas during all of that. And so over time, we had the basic ideas, but then we refined and refined and refined it. And at a certain point, and this really took about 10 years because we wanted to validate what we were doing. And so what ends up happening once you get to 10 years or so, you're going, okay, the baby needs to be born. And so that's where the book comes about. I mean, not to say that the things in the book can't be better, but it's good enough at this point in our judgment to kind of present it to people and let them weigh it out and see if they think that it applies to their situation.
Right. Well, I add to that. That's an excellent point. I add to that, and I have lived in Bridgeport and Hamden, Connecticut. I understand fully what you're talking about. I know the corridor, but the main difference is when you're on I-20 here in West Texas, when you go from town to town in Connecticut, you go from this street to another street, the city changes. Here you drive about 100 miles, then you see the next city,
Yeah.
There is a big difference. So you do have windshield time and you toss around and say, hey, what was the experience today talking to this manager or this decision maker? Wait a minute, let's compare some notes. And it makes sense. But independently coming to this conclusion that current lean, the way it is introduced, flat out doesn't work in many scenarios and in many settings in organizations. We came to that conclusion independent of one another. I actually was in Michigan and Sean was in Texas. I was working with tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers to GM and also to Toyota. And I was realizing, wait a minute, this just doesn't work. Flat out doesn't work. And then I'm talking to Sean. Sean says, no, I have the same issue. It doesn't work. We have to come up with some different way. So we go back to our roots of understanding how industrial engineering techniques and the knowledge that we have gained on processes and the way the quality is defined, how it really addresses the true value, what's the customer voice versus the manufacturer voice, from Ishikawa all the way to Deming's philosophy of customer-centric, and you just go on, plan, do, check, act. When you go to the depth of these, you realize that it's really, really important to take the absolute scientific way and apply it in an easy way. Don't dress it up with a lot of these jargons of value added, non-value added. I understand people love those kinds of things, but the fact is, try to define that to a shop floor guy who leads a team of 4 in a welding department or in a robotic department. They are just supervisors. They have no clue what you're talking about. And each one of them is going to have different definitions. Here you are, you're lost. You take it to the executive team and you have a room full of executives in C-level. You're talking to them. You're saying, look, you want to get into this in the simplest, easiest way. If it is easier, it is lean. If it is complicated, throw it out of the window. It's not lean. If somebody comes and tells you, let's draw something in here, portray how your processes work, and use 26 to 40 different symbols, that's not easy. That's total confusion. And if somebody comes and tells you, let's use 3 symbols, no, that makes sense, because even the janitor is going to remember what you told them. They'll never forget it. Most important is, to us, how do we hand out what we have as a tool for them to use in their job every day? And my most important example that I use, the simplest way, is you have 2 types of screwdrivers, generally speaking, flat head, and you have, of course, Phillips head. You're not going to put the flat head to Phillips screw to try to turn it. It's not going to work. But you don't have to be licensed electrician, licensed plumber, licensed mechanic to use those tools. My daughter can use them. My son can use them, who are 10 years old. I mean, these are simple things if you do it right. And the way we try to go about it is, how do we give this set of tools to folks and leave them so they'll know when to start, where to start, how to prioritize, how to really go about it. A lot of the time, our experience was we would see in front of us, teams are getting ready to do 5S. And you come back 3 weeks later, they're still stuck where to start from, how to go about it. It doesn't work. They want to do Kaizen event, which really, we don't really care about the words. Kaizen, we don't even use. We just talk about, let's do a quick baby step improvement. We don't have to become Japanese, a language expert to try to tell the shop floor guy who's been there for 20 years and looks at you and says, What did you say, Kaizen? What is the Kaizen? Is it some kind of a sauce? You have to be in their world. If you have something that really truly works in every environment, it better make sense to them.
Right. And I'll give you an amen, because that's one of the things I personally hate. And I don't use that term lightly, because I see a lot, especially online. And this is one of the knocks I have on social media, I guess, in general, is it's sometimes, I see people get in these arguments about, well, is it PDSA or PDCA? And well, Deming said this. And it's like, I get, and I know I'm biased, so I'll just preface this by saying this is only the world according to Paul Critchley. I'm not saying I'm right and everybody else is wrong, but I'm wholeheartedly with you in that it's got to be simple. When I walk out on a shop floor, I'm not going to start well, we should need to write a Ishikawa diagram and let's put a Kanban in. We'll run it, you said, if I start throwing around all the Japanese terms and jargon, people are going to look at me like I'm going to lose them.
Planet you're in.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole idea is I'm there to help make their lives easier. Right. And I am a staunch, I will die on this hill. Lean is all about, just that. It's a friend of mine says, we're not in the lean business. We're in the people business.
Yeah.
Because if we do this right, work, if we want to define it as work-life balance, work becomes so much easier that your life is better because you're not, right? All the other things, you're not running around looking for tools and information that you need because they're right there where you need them. You don't even have to think about it.
Right.
But it does. Why? I mean, 5S is pretty simple, but why does it even have to be 5S? Why is that air quotes a thing? Let's just say, I wish this was here. Fine. Put it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
this. This is absolutely amen to that. Thank you for mentioning that. We fully agree with you.
Yeah.
We are in the business of people, but as you read in the book, our focus is truly in the business of product. We are totally focused on the product because people in an organization have one function, and that's serving the product. Therefore, as an end result, that indicates what the organization is all about. Your communication, the way you are in your company, your enterprise, people see you, or outside world sees you from what you offer to them. They don't know if your employees took a shower today or yesterday. They don't know what kind of a cologne you're wearing, what kind of a style they have no idea what color you are. They don't know if you have a long hair or short hair, a beard or not. They don't care. What they see is what you offer to them. And that's the product. Now, if that product is in high quality and reliability, and people can pay fair price, not high price, that's what lean is all about. Produce a product that's high quality, faster, and reliable for a fair price. All three of them. You can have low cost, you can have high quality, you can have fast. All three of them. That's what lean is all about. Whereas we have been brought up, you cannot have these. If you want high quality, you better spend $1, my man. If you want fast, it's going to be very expensive. If you want really quick and not good quality, I'll bring it to you, but it'll be crappy, excuse the word. So the point I'm making, we were not brought up that way. Even today, for God's sake, Amazon says, I'll deliver it to you, but it's going to be Prime, so you have to pay extra. I'm going, why? If you can deliver it fast, why don't you deliver it fast in the first place anyway? But a lot of people buy into it. That's the marketing piece of the equation that we don't want to get into. But the reality is lean makes it faster, high quality, and low cost, both for the producer as well as for the consumer, because consumer now enjoys. They can rely on the product, they can use it for a long time, they can enjoy it, and they can pay less because the profit margin increases when you have faster, better, cheaper to the producer. If the profit margin increases, why are they going to worry about it? They are not going to worry about it. So that's really the core of lean in our book.
Yeah. Gotcha. And something I would add to that is, and I like your point, Paul, very much about people, because one reason that we like to emphasize product is that, and I think you saw it in the book when we talked about it, but often you can get to an objective more quickly and more directly if you actually attack it indirectly. Like, for example, if you attack the product and make sure the product gets what it needs as fast as possible, it has a way of creating a very people-friendly environment.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that we found. And so that's because sometimes if you decide to go into it saying, I want this to be great for people, that can take on a ton of forms. But really, there aren't that many ways to serve the product properly, but practically every one of them, if not all of them, end up being people friendly. So to me, if you attack the product right away, it ends up being people friendly, but you'll also get that bottom line good result for the company and for the customer as well. So that's the thing that we found, because ultimately, if you cause people to have to do a whole lot of extra work or run on the wheel twice as fast, you're not going to serve the product. So you have to make it easy to serve the product for it to happen. And that's something, and I'm sure you found that in your own work as well, Paul.
Yep. And that was another big point in the book that I took away from it, at least, was I really appreciated your viewpoint on time.
Right.
In our workshops, I talk a lot about that, and I start out, there's a riddle, I think it's from The Hobbit. And the answer to that riddle is time, and because this all comes down to, what are we going to spend our time doing? And
Right.
I'll say not normal is the wrong term, in typical lean terminology, we use value add, non-value add. And I know you guys don't use that, because you look at it right from, as you said, Sean, serving the product.
Right.
So walk us through what you mean a little bit by that, because I think that it's going to be different for a lot of people who listen.
Okay. Well, I'll say this. It's absolutely, and I know you've read this in the book, but we make sure that people keep a strict frame on the product. Everything is from the viewpoint of the product, not from a view of a resource. So when we're talking time, it's a product-based idea. So for example, if an employee has to spend 30 minutes looking for tools before they can start a job, we don't talk about this person's expending excess motion going out and getting tools. We say the product had to wait 30 minutes for tools to be available. But online, we can get into that more as we go. But if you maintain that strict frame, you get very consistent results and simple results. Because one thing, like I think anybody that's worked in a corporate setting will see that you can practically cost justify anything you want to cost justify based on the frame of reference you're taking. And to me, when you're doing lean from one strict frame of reference from the standpoint of the product, you don't get these contradictions in outcomes, because a lot of people talk about a balanced scorecard, things like that, because in my opinion, what they're doing a lot of times is they're changing their frame of reference. They're saying, oh, I'm going to look at it from the company standpoint, or from the employee standpoint, or the customers, or am I not using a resource? But the framework changes constantly and you can't get a consistent result. So when you do that product-based frame, and you do it from a time idea, time is only looked at one way by people. But the thing is, when you start getting into stuff like value, things get wildly subjective, because different customers have different ideas. When you're down on the shop floor, it's a speculation. Like, okay, a customer wants to pay for packaging, a customer doesn't want to pay for packaging. I always kind of went, who cares? But the point that I bring up is that when you're doing these, and I know here's the deal. Like, we've never talked about this, Paul, but I'm going to put my psychic hat on. I guarantee you, this has been my experience, is that often enough, whoever wins the argument about value added, non-value added is whoever has the emptiest bladder. You know what I'm saying? Because some people just want to get out of the room and go, relieve themselves, if you know what I'm saying.
Sure.
The point I'm bringing up is that it's just kind of like one of these fruitless discussions. Whereas if you can just go at it from the standpoint of strictly the product and strictly the time, you'll end up serving the employees, the managers, and the owners and the customers all at the same time, and you don't get these contradictions. So that's what we found.
And so I drew a little bit of my own conclusion. I don't know if you guys meant it to go this way, but I'll share with you what I took away from when I read your book. Is that's also what you just described is also a core to respect for people, which, if we assume, there's continuous improvement, respect for people is the two pillars of the house of lean.
Right.
Because as you described it, Sean, it's not respectful to not give somebody, like you said, if I'm going to look for a tool for half an hour, that's not respectful for my time. Now, from my perspective, I could take the avenue of, well, who cares? I'm still getting paid, whether I'm doing this or I'm doing that. But at the same time, I see the KPI board over there and I
Yeah.
see our on-time delivery is not great. And I know my
Yeah.
supervisor is going to come to me Thursday afternoon and ask me if I can work Saturday. And my
Mhm.
kid's got a baseball game. And I know then I've got a decision to make. And
Right.
I really want to help my company because I want to keep my job, but I really want to be at my kids' and it's like those situations go away
Yeah.
when we do this part right.
Right.
And again, that's where I personally always come back to, because, and one of my sayings is, if the spindle's cutting chips, right, that's a good
Yeah.
thing. But
That's
looking for tools, getting information,
Yeah.
setting up, yada, 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 right?
Right.
That spindle's not cutting chips. It's not moving from the product perspective. It's not moving
Yeah.
forward.
Right.
correct.
And something I would add to that, to me, in terms of the respect for people, it's again, when we talk about attacking something indirectly or directly, to me, like respect for people, I'm 100% for it. And I always try to be respectful the way I approach people. But to me, it takes on so many different people's ideas of what that is can change so much. I mean, it can range from tough love all the way to, I've got to accommodate a snowflake. Like you've got people that now, if you say something slightly that could be interpreted as negative, they call it a microaggression. The point I bring up is that if people start with an idea of respect for people, no one has the same idea about it. The nice thing is that, to me, if you start with product, you go backwards, it has to end up with a respect for people, but it takes on a very narrow form that actually, I think, accommodates 99% of people. There are some hypersensitive people that might not be okay with it, but I'd say the vast majority will be,
Well, and it could. I mean, we're all different, right?
Right.
But to your point, we all value different things.
Yeah, right.
But, for lack of a better term, it kind of sort of takes care of itself again, if you, right? So I don't have a decision to make on Thursday afternoon if I have to tell my boss if I can come in or not, right? Because one way or the other, somebody's going to be disappointed. I'm either going to disappoint my boss or disappoint my family. And those are just situations that I've been in I'm sure you guys have too.
Oh, sure.
I've had
Absolutely.
employees who've been, I've put in that position in previous lives, and, I see it at clients now too. And it's just, it's for, you choose between bad and worse, and neither one, they both suck. I mean, let's just call it what it is,
Right.
So to your point, if we, handle it, from the product perspective up front, it kind of flows down. And I got to share this one story with you that as I was reading your book, I'd forgotten this from my history. When you talk about value and who defines value, we always say as lean practitioners, well, the customer defines what the value is, but different customers value different things. I was at a supplier conference for a Toyota. Like I mentioned, I worked at a tier 1 automotive supplier. And I'll never forget, they had this, it was in this like giant, like hangar, I think. I don't know how many hundreds of people were there. And I remember one of the employees of Toyota got up and they presented a study that they had done for Lexus. And they talked about the air vents in the cabin. So typically there's 4, right? It's the left and right-hand side of the steering wheel, and then kind of over on the passenger side. And they literally had, and I forget the numbers, but tens of cars, hundreds of cars, they measured the force it took with that little tab in the middle to slide it back and forth to move the direction. And they found that it was like the passenger side left-hand one always was like half an ounce more than the other 3. And they had the graph and it bounced, the whole thing. And I can remember, so as I was reading your book, that story came back to me. And it made me remember what I thought when I sat there, which was, really? Like, I get it from a relentless pursuit of perfection perspective, but I'm like, half an ounce, like, can, most, I don't know. I mean, I've never done a study like that, but to me, I could care less, if that means that I can get that car for $500 less, you can make it 3 ounces difference. I don't care, so it was challenging to me, I'll tell you, when I read it, because I'm a lean guy. So I always think value add, non-value add, and, but it challenged my thinking. So I got to give you credit.
Oh, thanks.
I like to add one more thing about what we have experienced in our approach to lean, and it has been really eye-opening because we have we both work for a nonprofit organization called BeehiveFund, and we have a variety of different partners and such. And A few of our partners who are HR experts and work for HR firms, we have over the years gained their respect a lot, and they actually like our approach. They do talk about their internal human resource process and what they have to go through for their functions. And we have had a few of those projects to help them from our standpoint of how we approach to make it more robust and less headache, more effective, meaning lean. And they've loved it. But one thing has always been common among these HR folks has been, golly, your product focus takes away a lot of the issues we hear and experience with employees, particularly when it comes down to employees' conflicts. When you have situations where peer-to-peer or subordinate to supervisor have these conflicts, and supervisor says to certain employees, you have to stay overtime or you have to come back over the weekend, and now it creates conflicts. And we constantly fight this. But your product approach is fabulous. And they come back to us and they say very proudly, we had this situation with supervisor and two of the employees came, and this was actually happened a few months ago, came to my office and I was there and they were talking about what the conflict was. And I turned and I said, well, I hear all three of you well, but let me ask you a question. What you're saying, was it something that the product needed at the time? And all three of them looked at me and said, no, what do you mean? And I told them, well, if product doesn't need any of your issues that you're addressing as problem, why is that a problem? Let's go focus and see what product needs. And thus goes our idea of, if you focus on the product, variety of the issues that are inner conflicts among people go away, because resources are constantly pressed down to be costing less by the management, by the financial department. That obsession with the resource is not healthy at all. In fact, it is very deadly. It creates wrong competitiveness and competition. It creates animosities. It creates a lot of different issues that we all see with people working in organizations. Focusing on the product washes 90+% of them away. Those are not issues anymore. It becomes, yes, if product needs my help at this time, I'm going to provide it. If it doesn't need it, then supervisory becomes much easier. Supervisor doesn't have to go ahead and make a lot of decisions because it's already made for them. The product is waiting in delay mode, asking for your help. Go do it. Or product is passed through, doesn't need help. So let the people go live their lives. They don't have to spend extra time. So these are the things that we are experiencing, and that gives a better dimension to our approach, where it's becoming more of a soft skill to even HR folks.
And that's, I mean, honestly, I have friends who work in lean HR kind of stuff, and that I wish, and we'll keep working on it. I mean, the three of us, along with everybody else, is to try to proliferate that, because at the core, it's interesting. It's interesting because you guys keep saying the same thing, and I agree. If you look at it from the product perspective, right? I'll just use this terminology, even though, because I don't have a better one. It'll take care of itself, or 90% or whatever that percentage of the other stuff.
Right.
But I don't know. I'll after we hang up, I'll think of what I should have said. But it's not that it takes care of itself, but it gets, like you said, Michael, it gets easier.
Yes.
Right down the line.
Yeah.
So if you guys could, and because I cut you off, I think, Sean, last time.
No problem.
Talk a little bit when you say from the like the product perspective. Can you hum a few bars about what you mean by that?
Okay. Well, and I'm sure you've read this in the book, and if people decide to read, they'll see this, but I'm going to tell the story about a movie called Castaway that starred Tom Hanks. And I always like to use this to illustrate from the standpoint of the product is that, and for those that don't remember that movie, Tom Hanks starred as an employee of FedEx, and he got marooned on a desert island, and he had his companion that was a volleyball named Wilson. So I think most people might remember that. So anyway, it's a 20-year-old movie, but I thought it was a great movie, but it really spoke to my inner lean practitioner from the very beginning, because at the very beginning of the movie, Tom Hanks goes to a FedEx office in Russia, and a kid hands him a box, and he opens the box and he pulls out a clock. and that clock says 72 hours. And so in another way of looking at it, from the standpoint of that package has been sitting around for 72 hours in the FedEx system. And typically, in most FedEx situations, it needs to be 24 hours or less. And when we talk about quantum lean, we talk about that package. When if you drop all the ingredients to mail the package down and start the clock, and then put the clock inside the package and follow it through the system, once it's ready to ship or once it reaches a customer and you pull that clock out, what would the clock say? And in our mind, that is the barometer for how effective and how efficient an operation is. If you are really not doing well on that one, it's going to offset so many of your other efforts. Because I'll say this, there are a lot of great lean programs out there, but a lot of them really focus on things like making your job just a little bit faster, a little bit better every day, doing it real slowly. But what I'd liken that to in a lot of cases is it would be like, I'm going to get to the office faster by modifying my car, by, changing my braking, when you're entering a freeway that's in a traffic jam. And the fact is that traffic jam is going to be dictating what your time is. Mm-hmm. And so to me, when we're doing quantum lean, we're looking at how much time do you spend. There will come a point, like when you can get rid of the traffic jams or get the traffic lights to synchronize, then doing those little 2-second improvements on your job are going to really have a huge effect. But before you can get rid of the traffic jam or get rid of the unsynced lights, then actually making 2-second improvements on your job is not going to show up all that nicely. It'll show up a little bit, but it's really going to be overwhelmed by the other stuff. But I didn't mean to digress too much. But what I'm getting at is that from the standpoint of the product, think of the FedEx package and that digital clock that was inside in Castaway. Mm-hmm. Does that illustrate the point to you pretty well, Paul? Or?
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that analogy, because you're absolutely right. And I did see that, obviously, like millions of other people. I saw that movie, and that was a great scene. Mm-hmm. And because it spoke to me too, as a lean practitioner, industrial engineer. It's like, I get it, because who cares? Like the customer, nobody cares how how good our blueprints are, how what I'm wearing, how great our QMS is, or whatever. As a customer, I care about, Michael, like you said, good product, fair price, good quality, right? So I can call you up and order my widget and hang up, and I can worry about something else. And I know when you tell me I'll get it in 3 days or 5 weeks or whatever it is, I know when it comes in, it'll be fine. And that's it. I don't have to worry about it anymore.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely. I wanted to point out very quickly about the idea of simplicity, because simplicity as a core of our approach to product centric, it relates to the fact that if you focus on the product, one entity, versus on all the resources that you have to keep a gauge on, like Sean said, if you just take the parameter of the time in system of the product and focus on that, it's going to spread out. The benefits will spread out to everywhere. But if you try to track all these resources one at a time, whether it is human resource or materials or machinery or whatnot, and try to improve them every 2 seconds at a time, it's not going to show up as a collective improvement, because often certain departments or certain processes improved in an organization could be at the cost of many other processes, which is the very definition of systems. And when you look at a system, which is a combination of processes, if you just go ahead and focus on one area, that's not improving the system. So it's important to understand that. But the result that comes out passes throughout the entire system. And that product has a time. If you improve that time, that means all the processes must be in sync, just like Sean said. Otherwise, you're going to have these up and down and delays. So focusing on that particular entity will answer to all other entities, including the customers. Yes, customers define the value, but scientifically speaking, this is just blown so out of proportion, and it really makes me upset sometimes. And I see some of my fellow practitioners don't really pay attention to the depth of how simple this is. The value is scientifically defined in the literature, and it's a simple equation of what you give up towards what you gain. It is the idea of difference between burden versus benefit. If your burden and benefit are equal, your value is big fat zero. People don't understand this.
Hmm.
You can quantify anything that you give up in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of money. Once you quantify that and you buy a product against it, or you hire a service against it, and if that cost you pay is going to be equal to what you gave up, your value that you gained is zero, absolutely zero. The only way you have positive value is when you benefit from what you spent in terms of your efforts and money, and the benefit you gained is beyond it. So if you spent $10 and you gained $11 of benefit, that $1 difference is the value. If you spend $10 and you got $10 value, or I mean benefit, you have zero value.
Mhm.
People have a hard time understanding this. So when it comes down to value added here, non-value added there, it really gets very confusing. We believe in a very simple approach. As you know, simplicity makes it safer. The simpler it is, the safer it is. And go figure, every company talks about safety. To make an environment safe, make the operations simple. The simplicity will become the idea of what the product needs. If the product needs something, provide. If it doesn't, you don't have to worry about it. Keep it simple. That becomes much easier. So simpler, safer. As a consequence, it's going to be much, much higher quality because it is not complicated. Therefore, simplicity creates more focus and allows the operators, allows the management to focus on the product much more effectively, meaning making the product in the first round much more high quality, so there won't be a need for rework.
Mhm.
Once you have less rework, the cost goes down. So higher the quality, lower the cost. Isn't that amazing?
I know, right? You ought to write that down. I can't. Right?
Exactly. Higher quality, faster, because you're not doing rework, so it goes out fast, then lower the cost.
Yeah.
Now the organization has high quality product with low cost. That means you have higher margin. You give it to the customers are going to enjoy it. They're going to spend fair amount of money, which is still is higher margin to you as a producer, but the customer is going to enjoy it in the long run because it's more reliable, high quality, and they're going to get it on time. So that is really a simpler way of doing that. Not to mention the number of the accidents and unsafe practices go down. When you have simpler operations, obviously it's much easier to handle the work.
Right, right. And I'll just say, I mean, just from my limited experience, I've been on in my history of in manufacturing engineering, I was on, I don't know how many safety teams. Anecdotally, I will say that the overwhelming, if we paraded out every root cause of people getting hurt, overwhelmingly, it was because people were rushing.
Yes.
And then when you ask, so we do the 5 whys, right? Well, why were you rushing? Well, I was late on this. Well, why were you late? Well, I had to, and you always get down to, I didn't have what I needed when I needed it. That I was feeling pressure from my boss because we were late, right?
Yes.
And just like we've been talking about for the last half hour,
Exactly.
you make all that stuff go away. Now you can slow down, focus a little bit more, right? People don't get hurt.
Exactly.
All the good stuff. It's all the good stuff that comes along with what happens when we do this right.
Exactly.
And
so,
I'm
guys,
glad
I do
you
like to
offered
take a
this
little bit of a break from the,
Yes.
Air quotes formal part. Not that this is
Okay.
a super formal podcast,
Okay.
but I like to play a game I call the Wicked Fun part.
Okay.
If you guys are up for it, I have a few kind of rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
Do our best.
And I'll leave it up to you. You guys can pick and choose which ones you want to. It's all G rated, so you don't have to worry.
You're disappointing me there.
It's a family show.
Okay. Fair enough. There are kids listening. Okay. Yeah.
What do you think about when you're alone in your car?
Well, I'll go ahead and volunteer that. It really depends on where I am. And I think this is maybe the engineer in me. And it's kind of like I'm looking at things like road construction and I'm thinking, why couldn't it have been, instead of this A thing, why couldn't it have been this B thing? And, or I'm seeing maybe the highway next down at this point and I'm going, really, it should have been wider at this point. Or I look at the signage and I'm going, okay, this signage is not accurate. It should be accurate. And this is, and I think every engineer has this inner critic that kind of looks at stuff and thinks, how could it be better? And so I'd say, I mean, that's not the only thing I think about. I think about, I want to get a drink on the side of the road, or, whatever that may be. But, something that I'll think about a lot is just, I'm looking at my surroundings and just thinking about how it might be a little bit different,
Guilty.
Yeah, there you go.
It drives my wife absolutely crazy.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit psychic. I kind of know what you're thinking, Paul. So that's
yeah.
I'm
an open book, Shaq.
there you go.
Yeah, you want to question everything, and you talk about what can I do to improve it. That's really the core of my life. And recently, I tell you this, I added something to my thinking when I'm driving. I can't wait for self-driving cars. So I can think more. I don't have to pay attention to the road. I can question more,
I'm holding out for teleporters. My money's on that one.
I like that. Yeah.
I believe Elon Musk will make it happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
There you go.
How about what inspires you?
I'll take a shot at that. My biggest inspiration is when I see the work that I do, how small or how large it is, doesn't matter. When I see the work I do is easily and quickly understood by the people that I'm doing with. When I see that transition, it really charges me. It inspires me to do more. That's just fabulous. More importantly, over the years, I've been married for a long time to my wife, and she's also the same background as I am, and she's a little bit more intelligent than I am, obviously. So I got lucky on that with mechanical engineering, and then of course industrial and systems engineering. And she has the same background, but she's been a great inspiration to me as well, simply because the way I question everything, she questions me, and that inspires me quite a bit.
Nice.
I'll volunteer on my end as far as what might inspire me, and I guess different things. But if you can actually be of help or use to somebody, it actually, and funny enough, it's often when you're helping somebody else, it's it gives you more of a, at least for me, it gives me a little more of a spring in my step. Because I'll give you a nice example. Just this weekend, well, I was talking, Paul, you and I were talking about this, and I don't think it's a big deal if I volunteer when this is recorded, but this is February of 2021. And in Texas, we had this big freeze, utilities were cut off, people lost water, so forth. But long story short, like I've got some family members that live, like maybe about 2.5 hours away, and they had some issues as far as some plumbing problems and electricity. And they called today and they asked, can you come over and help? And actually, if it were my own house, I'd be going, I'd be kind of grumbling, going, dadgum, I got to fix this plumbing and everything. But actually, I'm looking very forward to going to my family's house and helping them fix their plumbing. It's a weird thing, like if you're having to work on your own stuff, it's not quite as neat. But if you can help somebody, a lot of times it's just, it just has a different feel to it. So I'll say maybe
I think
that's inspiring.
It touches a different part of our heart, I think.
Yeah. So it's kind of neat. Yeah.
Nice. How about easy ones? What's your favorite word?
I'm going to volunteer Michael for that, and then he'll give me time. He'll give me time to think about it. Yeah.
My favorite word is product. My second favorite word is product. My third one is product.
Yeah.
That's my favorite word.
Yeah. And I'll say product, but I'll also say yes and no, depending on the context,
All right.
So sometimes yes and no. Yes can be a great answer. Sometimes no can be a great answer. So.
Right. That's right. Reading a bunch of, you can't see it. These bookcase behind me has, umpteen books in it. And that's a bunch of the leadership ones. It's like, sometimes the best thing you could say is no.
Yeah. And Paul, I may add something to it, because when I say product, often people think of tangible type of product coming out of a line. I'm talking about end result. I'm talking about the conclusion and things that end and crisply are out, whether it is service or goods, or in essence is a solution to a problem. I'm looking into the end result. I think everybody's actions should end up in a very highly beneficial result, not only to the recipient, but also at large to the society.
Yes, I can't agree with that more. I mean, and I'll digress a little bit. It's, we've talked for the last 45 minutes or so. It's, it's all, businesses exist to make product and ultimately to make money. And I'll be frank, that's what the Toyota production system did. That's what they, right? It was built to convert orders to cash as fast as possible because it was after World War II and they had to. So I feel like sometimes we romanticize the respect for people part, which is, again, it's vitally important. And I stand there more than I stand with the tools, but you got it. The tools are going to get you there.
Exactly.
Right? And that's what I loved about what you guys wrote in Quantum Lean, to think you keep it simple, which, right? I'm a fan. Keep it simple and you do all this stuff right. And, you know, it's like life gets better. And everybody gets what they want. That's kind of the idea.
Pretty neat. Yeah, pretty neat.
All right. How about, let's see. What's a good one? What profession would you not like to do?
Okay. Well,
Sean,
Andy, well, I mean, there's so many, and I'm so grateful there are people that are willing to do them. You know, like I really don't want to be a coal miner very much. I don't want to be an oil rig worker. I mean, I respect their work so tremendously, but man, it's tough. And I mean, especially like, let's say you work on an oil rig, it's very physically demanding. It's very mentally demanding. It's, weather demanding. Like if you're working on an oil rig in North Dakota, I mean, you know, it's getting down minus 25 before wind chill. And so those are tough, gritty jobs. I have to say, maybe I'm a wimp, but I don't want to do those real badly. And then also, I'll just say in general, as a profession, I really don't want to be a doctor that much because I'm squeamish about blood. So that kind of disqualifies me. So I'll leave it at that. So,
okay.
Well, there are many things that I don't want to be, but I tell you this, on the top of all of them is the idea of being a person who deals with dead bodies. I don't want to be in morgue. That's one thing I want to avoid. I don't care how lean that will become. I don't want to do it.
Right. That's right up there. Yeah, exactly. That's like being able to say no. I think it's finally important that we know what we're not cut out to do.
Right.
And I'm right with you. I'm there with you on those. So guys, we have a few minutes left. So I just want to throw it out to you. If there's anything that you think might be of value, pun intended, to the listenership, that maybe we haven't chatted about or that you wanted to talk about, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, appreciate it. I would say and to me, a reader, I just happened to see something on the computer about this very recently, but there have been over 1,000 books written on lean, you know, and that's at least. And this guy was making a point. He's saying, you know, what needs to be said that hasn't been said? Because obviously people keep writing these books. And I think that's a beautiful question. And to me, people listening to your program are going to be thinking, why on earth do I need to read Quantum Lean? There's so much stuff out there. And so the thing that I would offer to them is that, and this is one reason we wrote Quantum Lean, because it really drove me kind of nuts with other publications. And I'm not going to say it's a true 100%, but it's largely true that they don't give you a practical or practicable way of translating the high-minded principles of lean into actual, you know, tangible something at your particular setting. And so the thing that I would offer to people is that Quantum Lean will give you a lot of tips and a framework that I think you can really readily convert what lean is after into your situation. And to me, it does some key things. It kind of bypasses the issue of value and the issue of waste. It just focuses on time. And if you chase time, you'll take care of those issues of value and waste, but you don't look at them directly. And the other thing, it's maintaining that product-centric frame ensures a consistency and simplicity as well. So what you'll do is you'll get I think, an approach that you can apply much more readily and simply. People will learn it better. And I think if you've had disappointment with lean before, I think this book can restore your confidence in bringing lean to your situation.
From my standpoint, and Sean touched on this as well, we do get fair share of companies coming to us and asking us to help them in their lean journey they started a few years back. They have now got stuck in a position that they can't go forward, or things have not turned out to be as they were promised. We do get fair share of projects like that. And that's one of the main reasons as well. We try to make the book in a way that people will be able to implement using the tools themselves. So that is really critical. And I can tell you there are some key experiences I've had that are common among all the people, whether we are doing a lean project or otherwise. And one of them is the confusion about quality versus luxury. In our society, unfortunately, we have been victim to the advertising and marketing folks, and they try to take advantage of us. And often people mistake luxury for quality. I can give you a simple example. If you take, for instance, Cadillac CTS against Chevy Malibu, 99 out of 100 people are going to say Cadillac is more higher quality. 1%, being me and Sean, will say no, Chevy Malibu is higher quality. Because really, people don't understand, or if they do, they are sold with the luxury. They see nice trimming, wood trimming, and so on. You can have a gold-plated wheel, it can still be bad quality. It cannot function. We can see those. I would give a message to your audience that please make sure not to confuse that. And that also comes down to our book. Our book is not full of fluff. We didn't put there a lot of ongoing, in the literature, you see these nice glossy pictures and things like that. We made it very practical, things that will stay with you, things that you can actually practice on your own and see the results in front of your eyes. It's a very simple approach. It gives you the core of understanding what lean is all about. At the same time, how you can use it. It's like any kid you give a soccer ball knows how to kick it from, I guess, nature. They can walk, they kick it. That's one of the reasons it's the most popular sport in the world. You can go to any poor country, you drop a ball, kids just congregate and start kicking it around. It's like that. Our book is very easy to read and simply to apply. More importantly, we stand behind it. We work for a nonprofit organization. Our doors are open. Reach out to us. We are delighted to help you. We don't bite. We don't ask you to go ahead and deposit money to our accounts. We don't do that. We are very open. We are very understanding of people's needs. Sometimes they get stuck in a position that they can't continue, or sometimes they don't know from. We tell them, look at the guidance the book gives you. If you are still unclear, give us a call, give us an email, drop an email for us, and we are happy to follow up. We are very responsive, and we take pride in our non-profitability.
Nice. And I will say, I'll just give you some of my feedback from reading it. I mean, I've been at this for 25 years now. There was stuff in your book that made me stop and think. And, and I like to think, I mean, I'm by no means an expert. I don't use that term, but I like to think I'm pretty good at it.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And still that to me, that's the beauty of what lean is, not to make it a religion, but like we talked a little bit before we hopped on, and, you keep it simple. So to me, it's like, if you do something and it works, keep doing it. Right. If you do something and it doesn't work, don't do it anymore.
Yeah, stop it.
And just that's it. That's kind of
exactly.
Not to oversimplify, but I will link out to your book. So it's titled Quantum Lean. So I'll link to it in the show notes so people can find it. Now, the nonprofit you guys have is called the BeehiveFund.
Yes, BeehiveFund.org is the URL, and you can reach out to us through there, or you can directly even email it to us. We are more than happy. We are very open. My email address is my first name, Michael, Michael, @BeehiveFund.org. And Sean, I'll take the liberty to tell your email address. It's s.fields@BeehiveFund.org. We are very open, very easy to reach.
Yeah.
Great. And then Sean, if you could just throw me your social security number too.
Oh, there you go.
I'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Okay.
That would be fantastic.
You'll be surprised. You'll come up emptier than you think. But that'll be,
All right, gentlemen. So thank you again so much for spending the time with us. I know I got a lot out of it. And again, I loved the book. So
thank you much.
I know people will, get something from it as well once they read it.
Well, that's very nice to hear. And thanks for having us on. It's a total pleasure being on this interview. So.
Yes, Paul, my hat off to you. What you're doing is fantastic. Thank you for this opportunity. Yeah. And I know your listeners and your audience are very grateful. I am very grateful. I've seen several of I've gone to your website. I've listened to many of them. You do a great job. We really appreciate the opportunity. If we can be of any help to you, please don't hesitate to reach us as well.
Yeah. Great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, fellas, I'll let you go.
Okay. Well, you too. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
See you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, it's Paul. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thanks again for listening. You've really made doing this podcast a very rewarding experience for me. I get a lot of messages from listeners. Everyone has something nice to say, which I very much appreciate. Of course, I'm always open to feedback on ways we can make it better. I mean, that's Kaizen after all. And by no stretch do I claim to have got this all figured out. So if there's things that I could do better, please, by all means, feel free to reach out and let me know. And likewise, if there's somebody that you think would be a great guest, also let me know. There's a chance I don't know who those folks are. So somebody that you can help put us in touch with, somebody you want to learn more about, certainly let me know and I'll reach out to those folks. But I hope you find the podcast fun, entertaining, educational, and maybe even a little inspirational, I hope. That's really what I'm going after with this whole thing. So thanks again, and one small ask, if you don't mind, if you listen, whatever your preferred platform is, if you could just, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple or whatever, again, whatever platform you listen to, it helps. The algorithms like it. So if you could do that for me, I would really appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, everybody.